Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming out to 1 Million Cups Chico today. We are just going to do a quick overview of the history of 1 Million Cups, our featured presentation, a Q&A session, and then some closing statements. So 1 Million Cups is brought to us by the Kauffman Foundation. The Kauffman Foundation works with communities in entrepreneurship and education to increase opportunities that allow all people to learn, take risks, and own their successes. So 1 Million Cups is a free weekly program that educates, engages, and connects local entrepreneurs. And their mission is to lower the barrier of access to education, resources, and connection for all types of new and aspiring entrepreneurs throughout the US. So they started really small in 2012 in Kansas City, and now they have over 130 communities, all with about 1 to 2 presentations a week, a 6-minute presentation and a 15-minute Q&A. And we are here every Wednesday at 9 a.m. on Zoom and at Stovall Coffee. And if you would like to join our community, follow our chapter on the 1MC platform, 1millioncups.com/Chico. And today we have Steve Boyle from Essential Aero. Are you all ready to start your presentation?
I am. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Let's see if this works.
Yep.
Are we? Can you see the only the main slide, first slide here? Okay, great.
Good.
So thanks for inviting me into the group this morning to talk about our company and tell you about what we're doing. I'm Steve Boyle. I'm the CEO of Essential Aero, and we're automating the inspection of physical infrastructure using robots and computer vision, which includes AI. The reason for that is because, well, just to give you a little context, physical infrastructure encompasses roads and bridges, airports, power lines, just big pieces of construction that we all count on, but we can see, you know, the things that we can see, we can tell there's could be problems, could be some disrepair, could be things in need of repair. And one of the key components for the whole life cycle of this physical infrastructure is inspecting it to see where the problems exist. Right now, most of this infrastructure is inspected by people walking around, driving around, flying around in helicopters or airplanes, inspecting it with their eyes and taking notes on notepads, or maybe filling out a form on a computer, or taking a snapshot with their phone. But it's a very arcane process. It's been generally the same for a very long time. It's codified in laws and regulations in the federal government, and it's just very expensive to operate. The training involved in one of these inspectors is enormous, and when you start moving them around with helicopters and airplanes, it just the numbers just get astronomical. But the biggest problem is that it's not scalable, because to increase the number of inspections you do, you have to actually hire somebody and train them. It's just not something. It's not a sustainable, scalable situation. So, and as we've seen, you know, when some of there's very small problems that occur in this infrastructure, they can turn into something catastrophic pretty rapidly. The Oroville Dam is somewhat close to you. It's like right between the two of us. That started out as a very small crack in the spillway, and then over time it got bigger and bigger. And then now, you know, the estimate is it's going to cost 1.1 billion to repair, which is something that, you know, my guess is it would have been, you know, less than 10K to fix it back in the day when it first started happening. And these are the things that are happening all over the place. And it's really a lack of data, a lack of inspections that would protect, you know, the taxpayer from having to fund all these catastrophic events. The estimate is that for automation of these inspections is 33 billion annually. So the total anticipated addressable market for this category is 33 billion. Right now they spend a lot more than that, because it's, like I said before, it's all human based. So using our system, which is totally automated, we automate the collection of the data, but also the detection of anomalies. We believe that we can save industry 75% of the cost of inspections. And I'll take you through a use case in a little bit. How this is represented to the end user is these 3 elements down below. We have a management console that runs in a browser. We have an Android application that's used by the pilot in the field to monitor in real time activities of the robots. And then we've got this payload that we attach to the bottom of a drone in the drone airframe. And these airframes are supplied by partners that manufacture, and we don't actually make the drones. Right now, we do make the payload because we're kind of we think we're ahead of where things will be. At some point, these things will be part of the standard equipment, but today they're not. So just to give you an example of how the economics work on this, this is an extreme example, but this is actually a current customer, and we're working on this specific use case. So I thought that at least there's some credibility here in terms of the numbers. So this is for the FAA. We're working with them to add the use of UAS drones to their capabilities to inspect facilities on airports, lighting systems and ILSs, all the things that are needed by a pilot to land safely on an airport on a runway. Today they use jets primarily. They're $30 million per aircraft once they're equipped with all the equipment that they need. There's 3 people in the tube. There's 2 pilots and there's a person in the back. You can see the person down below looking at the monitors and the data coming in. These airplanes are $6,000 on average per hour to operate, and for each inspection, the average is 6.5 hours for commissioning. So it's incredibly expensive. $40,000 per inspection is the number that they use, and with our system, the economics are totally different. So our aircraft is relatively cheap. It's still an expensive drone, but $25,000. There's a pilot, which is really an observer. That pilot really doesn't have to know anything about the inspection that's happening because it's all automated. The machine does it all automatically. Even if we charge a ridiculous amount of money, like $1,500 an hour, we're still saving 90% of the cost of inspections for this facility. So it's a small fraction of what it costs right now, and it's a no-brainer. So as I said before, the addressable market is big, and there's lots of different parts of the industry, lots of different industries we could dig into, but we're starting with airports. One of the reasons is we have the FAA as a customer. That's the rightmost column there. We talked about that already, so I'll talk about the airfield inspections. We're also selling, or we will be selling directly to airports, and airports are doing many inspections per day, dozens of inspections per day. They're required by the FAA to do this to keep their license to operate. They've got people riding around in cars and trucks 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. And what we're going to do for them is deliver the equipment and SaaS service. So they buy a subscription to collect this data and analyze it automatically. And there's quite a few airports here in the US, 20,000, 100 air bases. So we're obviously Air Force would be a great customer, and we're working on that. And we think that we can get around 100K per UAV per year. So small airports may have 1, large airports like SFO may have 5 because they need to have a spare, obviously, and then they're all doing different things. So this ends up being around $1 billion of addressable market here in the US alone, and it's obviously bigger worldwide. So the reason why airports is a little counterintuitive, but we do have some unfair advantages here. We have the FAA as a customer, which is super helpful and gives us lots of credibility. We're one of 2 entities in the US that are authorized to fly on airports. We're the only one that's authorized to fly in the traffic pattern with a UAV. We've got a lot of aviation experience. My first aviation company, I started in, I think, 2002. And we do have a lot of expertise in artificial intelligence and machine learning specifically. So in terms of traction, we had 220K in revenue last year. Right now we have 300K locked in, but we expect that to hopefully get to the 400 or 500K mark. This year we've got we're submitted for some grants with the Air Force through the AFWORKS program and through an SBIR, or each one was around 1.25 million. We're hopeful that they'll come through. We are a member, as we said before, of the Growth Factory Accelerator. We're part of cohort 1. So they're helping us and obviously scrutinizing what we're doing. And we have investment from Village Global, which is a boutique, large boutique seed investment firm in San Francisco. So they've obviously looked at what we're doing and think we're on the right track. And we have some trial agreements signed with airports around our area. So our plan right now is to continue to dominate the FAA. We're the only company they're working with. We want to move into the airport market and dominate that segment. We think we can do that pretty quickly. Activate a partner ecosystem so we can have service providers doing these inspections with our equipment instead of having us have the boots on the ground. It'll take a little while to get there because when you're starting these kinds of processes, you don't want to give your success, the success of your company over to somebody else. You want to make sure that you have it assured before you start bringing in people that could potentially do things wrong and challenge that. So we'll make sure that we're in dominant position. Then we'll activate the ecosystem, and then at some point we hope to move into a platform licensing position where there are other developers developing on our platform and producing their own products, and then we move from an operational company into a software development and licensing company. So I think that is my presentation for today. So with that, I will open the floor.
Let's give Steve a hand for his presentation. Oh, you guys are still on mute.
Good job, Steve.
Do we have any questions for Steve? You guys are still on mute if anyone's talking over there.
There we go.
Howdy. I want everybody else to ask questions before I start digging in because I'll take over.
Take over.
Well, no, I have questions. Yeah, so I'm interested in the construction industry, just because I work in it. What do you do for, you talked about drones, but do you do other automated computer, like
What other adjacent?
stuff do you do? Robots?
What other industries?
And there's robotics mentioned in your.
What other industries will they be going after in one order?
Right.
Well, we're going to focus on, right now we're focused on the industry that we selected, which is airports. So airports is a complex set of use cases of perimeter fencing inspections, runway inspections, debris inspections on runways and other surfaces. So, once we have all of those satisfied, then we could, take each one of those use cases out into a different place. For example, we were talking at one point to high-speed rail. They're going to have massive amounts of rail line, but also security fences down either side of it. And how do they inspect that? We can use the same process for that. We're talking to SMUD about potentially doing kind of a pilot with them. They're going to be fairly slow, but they're interested. One of the things that we're doing differently than everybody else is we're totally automated. So if you look at what PG&E is doing, for instance, using drones to inspect their power lines, they're doing it all by hand. They're flying these pilots actually joysticking all of this.
So maybe it'll turn it off.
That'll turn it on.
And so your drones are different from other people's drones, or are they using the same,
Brought that up.
same drone technology?
Well, they're probably a little bit bigger than most others, but the difference is the software. We have software on the drone, and that software is used to automate the collection process.
Is that correct?
Got it.
Yeah, on ours.
Anyway,
I do it.
just hit escape button and then go ahead and stop share screen.
That's awesome.
All right, so, hi, Steve, tell me where you were before coming on this, coming up on this, You said you've been in aviation for a while. Can you give us a little bit more of your background, please?
Sure. Yeah, I've been in tech since, I've been in tech in the Silicon Valley since
Yes.
1986. Started out at Airspace. My probably but best known or notable company was phone.com. We were the first company to put a browser on a cell phone back in the mid 90s. We became a worldwide standard. And then prior to the iPhone, everybody was using our software worldwide. That was a big event. I did a company in the 2010s called Joingo, and that was a mobile engagement company. So our launch vertical was casino gaming and hospitality. So hotels and casinos used us as their card program on a phone. It's pretty early, right after the iPhone was launched. And then I had my aviation companies where I took a little bit of a hiatus after the phone.com company and became a pilot and had a couple of had a charter service out of the Bay Area. So we had several airplanes, including turboprop airplanes, flew people all over the West Coast. And then I ended up getting asked by an old associate from telecom to come help him with a drone company called AirMap. And so I spent a little bit of time over there with him and noticed that this was there's going to be an explosion here. These robots, these flying robots are incredibly useful. They're going to replace a lot of processes that are out there right now. You know, why would you fly a helicopter over a fire when you could just send a drone over there? You know, for instance, why are all these helicopters flying around my house here in Sacramento? They could be just little drones that I can't hear. These things are all going to take place, and it's going to happen pretty fast, we think.
All right. Okay. So how did you get the FAA as your first customer?
Well, we were focused on the airports, the airport use case, and then they got wind of. We started talking to their certification folks, and then some other groups got wind of us doing this and said, "Hey, we have this use case that we're trying to figure out. Can you help us with this?" And so we ended up getting a contract. It took a long time. It took almost a year to get it.
They're not the easiest to work with. Okay, so when you're talking, what category of SBIR, since you have two, since it sounds like you're waiting for feedback on both of your phase twos, because 1.2 normally equals a phase two SBIR. Are they DOE, DOD, NSF? What category of SBIR did you get?
They're Air Force. One was
okay, so Air Force. So you're working with the AFWorks, Josh, with the AFWorks. Okay, got it. That's awesome.
There was AFWorks, and there was a second direct to phase two SBIR we submitted.
Okay. So I think an interesting statistic to help other people wrap their minds around this is also the aging out of the workforce, because that's very prevalent in aerospace. I have a background in aerospace, so that's the only reason why I'm bringing that up. There is a huge aging out, right? Whether it be AMPs, whether it be DARs, but you name it, there's just this huge issue, right? And those are all the same people who would be doing inspections, right? So that's another kind of, validating the hole in the market and that kind of stuff. And then when you go into other industries, whether it's working with Caltrans and DOT kind of inspections or things to that effect, they're having the same issues. So that's something that's going to translate across, I could almost go slide by slide and ask questions. I love what you guys are doing. I think it's crucial. I think like any industry that's highly regulated, that you're going to, already that it can take forever to get from point A to point B. I think it would be when you're doing these kind of presentations to people other than 1 million cups, you might want to talk about the longer sales cycle, so to speak, right? If that makes sense. You said right now you're working with drone manufacturers because you don't want to be in that business, especially initially. You want to bracket on to to drones, right?
Ideally, we're
Oh, are you-
software only. Yeah, that
I'm
would be,
sorry?
the goal is to be software only.
Right, right. So
hardware-
but what is it now? It's physical. Is it right now? It's the physical piece with the software, right?
Correct.
Right, okay. What drone manufacturers are you already working with?
There's two, one in San Luis, Inspired Flight, and then there's another one up in Seattle called Free Fly Systems. They're the two
Have you
that
heard-
best equipment.
Okay,
So-
cool. Have you heard of a company called Parallel?
I don't, not off the top of my head, don't recall.
Okay, they're located in Santa Cruz, and they're building these really, hardcore, bigger than usual drones. Specifically, their initial market is going after wildfire, right? The wildfire market. But I think U2 would be an interesting, their industrial strength. That I think U2 would be an interesting could have an interesting conversation. And they are partially supported by UC Santa Cruz, and they've had a lot of investment. So they're not, they've got room to breathe and to look at other markets. I'm really glad you're working with AFWorks. I think that's really a cool initiative with the Air Force. Next question I would ask would be, when you say 20,000 airports in the United States, does that include regionals, or is it just like, are those just main hubs that I'd love to get to understand the mix?
Yeah, that's a good question. And there are 38 main airports in the U.S. It's not even one in every state. So an SFO size airport, there's 38 of those. And then when you get to a Sacramento size airport, there's fewer. I forget the actual number, but this 20,000 includes private airports and GA airports as well. So in GA airports, they don't have a lot of money, but they do have a lot of need. And they're going to be becoming more and more important as the flying population spreads out with AAM and all the other new technologies that are coming out. So there's a lot of interest. The price point has to be adjusted potentially, but there's a lot of interest in having something that will go and inspect the airport automatically, and so that there doesn't have to be anybody out there at all. That would be the goal.
Okay.
I'm still wrapping my head around, you still need one person to operate this drone. So, and then if you had just a regular inspector, that's just one person. Why would it cut down in cost? I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. Because you still need an expert to.
The AI is the expert, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Machine learning. So the operator is like a drone operator.
Okay, so there being one expert that's somewhere else that's like interpreting all that, right?
Yeah, there's so that's a good point. So the at the end of the rainbow, these things are not needing anyone at all. The only reason why they need somebody today is because the FAA requires somebody to have line of sight to the vehicle to make sure it doesn't hit something. But that will change over time. As there's more flight heritage and there's more success recorded. So the end goal is for these not to have anybody there. But the key thing is that the person that's watching the drone fly just has to observe that it doesn't hit anything. They don't have to know anything about the inspection that it's doing. They don't have to be trained on anything other than keep the thing from hitting something. And this is super important because the amount of training that's required. For example, the FAA has no program right now to train any third party on how to inspect the things that we're inspecting with the drone today, because because they'd have to create another program to audit each one of those individuals that they're trained to make sure they're trained properly. Whereas with a machine, they can just audit the machine and make sure the machine makes the right decisions, and then anybody using that machine will inherit those right decisions. it totally changes this whole training process completely. And so rather than creating a program around training individuals and auditing their training every year, they want to, start qualifying machinery like what we're doing to do the same thing.
With regional airports, and so for those of you who don't know what GA stands for, when he's talking about GA airports, it means general aviation, doesn't mean like, okay. With regional and general aviation airports, it'd be, that might have contracts that keep them busy, but not necessarily commercial airlines. They still need the same kind of inspections. So it'd be interesting to see if those kind of inspection requirements could be baked into and contract monies to pay for that, say by the Cal Fires and such of the world. That would be interesting. It's in their best interest, right? And it would cut down the amount of money they would normally be having to pay for other, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know how those are structured today. I could ask.
I'd be interested to know if you where the money comes from and how quickly you can get it is always something that's interesting to discuss. And you pay for it,
You were
right now.
saying that, the need, they have the same need, but they don't necessarily have the same income, right? And then I was thinking about the different contracts that are normally applied to those kind of rural or regional areas. And most of the time they have to do with fire, right? Or high net worth individuals, or a combination of both. So anyway, so that'd be interesting to explore. Yeah. And or being baked in as a requirement, and because it'd be a requirement in the future, right? Not now, because of policy and all that other crap. Having grant money available to make sure that those, that'd be something that they could also add as eligible activities, right? That'd be interesting. Anyway,
Yeah,
those are my thoughts.
that's all part of that has to happen. And but it does take, as you said, a little bit of time. So there has to be somebody has to have the idea, then you have to prove that it'll work, and then they've got to study it for a period of time to make sure that it works, reliably, and then they change policy. So we're for the airport, for the FAA inspections we're working on right now, we're right in the middle where we've proven that it will work, and now we're waiting for the next segment to do the to build the flight heritage, and then the policy will probably come in 23.
Okay, I'll quit asking questions.
So for the software, do you program, I know there's a lot of regulations to inspect the plane, right? Do you program the software to know all the regulations? And so when it inspects, it knows whether it's yes, go, or no, fail kind of thing? Or is that something an individual person has to interpret the data at the end?
The goal is to have that be totally automated. Right now, we have a pilot, what they call pilot in the loop, that monitors the activity and can, make the final determination. But the goal is for that to happen automatically. There's no reason why it can't.
Right.
It does take some time to perfect that, though. We haven't spent time on that yet.
My next thing, I think it's 100%.
Yes, speaking of pre-programming, so when you were talking about some of the areas in which that are inspected daily, like the perimeter fencing and lighting and runway integrity, et cetera. Are those ones that are already pre-programmed, or do you only have, like, say there's 5 that have to, hypothetically, that need to be done every day regardless, but so far you've only got the first 3. I would love to gauge where that's at.
So we're in terms of the FAA, we've done what's called VGSI, the visual glide slope indicators, and then the approach lighting systems. So the big things that are out in front of the runways. So those are the things that are under test and being evaluated right now. On the airport, we're working on fence and FOD. So FOD is inspecting the runway for debris. Those are the two primary inspections. There's the highest quantity of inspections are on the perimeter fence, and the highest value inspections are on the FOD of the runway. So those are the 2 we focused on first, and they're entirely incredibly different. So there's almost like no overlap between the 2.
many employees do you have right now, Steve? Including
Full-time.
contractors?
6 or 7.
Okay.
Yeah, we're right now we're raising. We're taking in the last of a pre-seed. Hopefully that'll be closed in the next. Could be in the next couple of days. We'll see what happens. And then we're going to move towards a seed round in the fall, and hope to close it by the end of the year, maybe the first quarter of next year. And then that's for market launch.
Okay.
And there's no one else doing this. And what is there an error rate as far as the drones and the inspections? Like, what's the percentage of errors, I guess, if with this?
I mean, in terms of how much does it miss?
Yeah.
I miss it right now. It overly it's not a it's when you first start these things, you make it very sensitive, so it
Overcompensates or
it'll make things as problems when they really aren't. And then it learns over time that those things are really not problems. And so one of the things that's unique about what we do versus other cases like this is, most of these types of inspections are being done on something that's different every time. They'll go do this bridge and they'll do that bridge and they'll do this road and that road. We're looking at the same square mile over and over and over again. So like the fence line at SMF they drive that 12 times a day. So they're looking at that 12 times a day. So we're looking at the same piece, fence fabric
process over and over.
12 times a day, 365. You build up a library and a set of defects and things that aren't defects over time, and then eventually you get to 100%. But it doesn't happen.
And you run the data.
That database becomes pretty valuable. We'll have
for sure.
Pretty quickly we'll have the biggest FOD library, of images and labeled images in the world.
Wow.
And did you talk about your financing, how much you need and what you're asking for and how much you need for the next 3 or 4 years? I haven't put that in there, but it's right now we're trying to close the last 200K in a 650 pre-seed. And then the seed round will be somewhere between 2 and 5 million, depending upon how we see the next few months shake out in terms of the world economy and also the appetite to move fast. And then there'll be after that there'll be a Series A, in the $10 to $15 million range probably, but that'll be probably a little over a year is my guess. I think that we do have a customer that's paying. We're going to get they're earmarked 600K for us next year, fiscal year 23, for instance, which starts on October 1st of our year of 22. So that may not happen, but that's what they're hoping will happen. And so we have the investment, but we also have this cash flow from customer, which is helpful.
So Steve, additional question about, God, I keep forgetting my questions as I open my mouth. Go to the next question while this comes back to me and I'll write it down.
We call our little local airfield here, I call it Chico International. The prop planes used to fly in and out. I guess that's going to start up again. I was hoping maybe they could get an electric one in there. But anyway, so you could probably save them a ton of money if they have to go through all this stuff with the FAA.
Yeah.
But so that would not be called a regional, would it, or would that be more like a?
Yeah, for context, we lost our air service back in 2017, I think.
They're trying to get a new one, right?
Yeah, they're trying to get it back, but we all know how hard that is. So
But Reading has one.
Oh.
Reading,
Yes.
you have 5 flights.
Yep.
No, nothing international.
Okay,
No,
but
not
national.
international.
I was always joking about that.
They have 4 flights a day and are working on their 5th one.
Wow.
Yeah. And we're supposed to start up again in spring of 2023, but we'll see.
What carrier are you expecting?
We're currently talking with Allegiant, I know this. Legion American and Frontier.
Frontier
That's
was the
right.
other one, yes.
There's a
We're
fourth,
United.
yeah, there's a fourth one called AHA that used to be called Express.
Mhm.
But I don't know that they're really taking those people seriously. But those are the first three were the ones that are in serious discussions with, and are, I've already sent them all the info they need to help make decisions. And we've already gotten the grants for being able to do revenue matching while they start to ramp up usage, that kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
it's just a matter of time, hopefully. Hopefully the economy doesn't tank. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is American Eagle a little feeder line?
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
It'll be like the United, that was
Right, yeah.
basically.
Damn, I had a good question. Where it went.
Are there any restrictions on flying drones in airspace?
Yes,
Yeah.
lots.
Lots. So how do you,
They got the
they-
first.
They have the.
Yeah, they got approval. That's what I've heard, right?
Yeah, we,
That's
because of the fact that the FAA is our customer, and there's many different factions inside of the FAA, and our customer is not the one, our customer is called Flight Operations. So they own everything that flies, that the FAA owns, this group
Including drones.
advantages. And they want to add drones to that, and so we're helping them. But the people that approve access to airspace are a totally different group. But because it's all within the FAA, we're able to sit down with the people that do the authorization and approvals, and negotiate what they want to see in order to get this access. Normally, what you do is you apply, and they just say no, and they don't tell you why. And you know how the government works, right? So you're in a never-ending process of trying to figure out what they're thinking and how to get them to a yes, but they won't ever tell you. But we're in a position where they'll tell us. So it's a completely different place to be, and it's much more beneficial and productive.
There's a question in the chat area.
Yeah,
Thank
so Ed asked a question about how much time does a customer save using Essential Aero compared to traditional inspections?
Good question, Ed.
That was in there, yeah.
In terms of wall clock time, or in terms of
Oh,
person?
like it cuts it in half.
So it depends upon the inspection that's
That's the airport.
being that we're talking about. But for the FAA use case that we're working on right now, whenever they do an inspection, they have to launch an airplane, and there's 3 locations
5
that
hours.
they live.
And now it's 2.
And they have to reposition that airplane to where that inspection is going to take place, and then they have to do the inspection and then reposition it back. So we could be saving them days in terms of time, and then when you multiply it times 3 people. These people, these FAA employees, the pilots and the specialists sitting in the back, they're pretty highly paid, in comparison to somebody that's working on an airport. In terms of drone pilots, if they're making $100K a year, they're at the top end, and that's all in. But FAA employees, when you consider all the benefits and everything else, they're in the 200s per person. So. It's very different in terms of economics.
I remembered my question now. It had to do with certification of drone. Are you going to have an Essential Aero certification? And if so, how is that going to be taught? And then how many operators are you going to need in your forecast?
So the honest answer is we don't know yet.
That's fair.
But in terms of a certification of the software, I'm guessing that they'll have to be, when we bring on third-party inspectors or users of the product, they'll have to be trained. The way that the system is designed is it generates artifacts that can be used to prove the efficacy of the inspection after the fact. So rather than rely on the person that's running the system to say that, to be highly trained and be able to determine if it's working, and then to say that it passed or didn't, all that's being done by the machine, and the artifacts that prove it are collected. So there really isn't a lot of certification that has to happen on a per person basis. The certification by the FAA of the equipment and the process and the we don't know exactly what that'll look like yet, but it'll probably be centered around a policy change that allows this type of inspection under this with this criteria, with this set of tolerances and with this type of artifacts, and we're going to be the only company that has that, because the policy will be written around what we're doing. But as a government entity, they can't really just call us out as the essential, the essential Aero flight check. It's going to be
Right.
US-based flight
It'll be
check.
something generic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so another question that's semi-related is, what is the time from inspection to the report?
It's
How
immediate.
much time is that? It's immediate.
Oh, well.
Real
Okay.
time.
Well, sort of.
That's another thing that's very different about what we're doing is we're 100% live. So you don't fly and then look at what you got on your computer after the fact. It's all happens live. So we're connected to the cloud, and everything is being pushed to the cloud live. It's hard to go through all this in the 5 minutes presentation, but anybody in the FAA can join an inspection. It's like we are right now in a conference call. You can join an inspection.
Right. Watch in real time. That's awesome.
Um,
Last question.
we're gonna do
There's
one
one
more
more.
question, and then we are gonna wrap it on up.
Okay. Data security. So when I think, so I'm sure that the FAA is going to, and others will, have data security policy, right? And I just was thinking about how easy it is to hack into things nowadays, and how that could be a problem. Just wondering what you guys are doing to address that.
Yeah, well, our system is designed to be secure as a unit, but then it generates this data, as you pointed out, that they want to make sure they protect. We're still working right with the FAA use case. We're still working with them on where they want to put it, because they don't have because this is new and they're just dabbling in all this now. They don't have an organizational structure or a place to put it. There is an AWS instance for government. I forget the name of it now, but presumably, pardon me?
Yes, that's correct.
So presumably there will be a place that they'll want to store it. Right now, we're putting it into a SharePoint, which is not very user friendly. But they own the SharePoint, and it's supposedly secure. So, over time, we don't really want to be responsible for it, honestly. So, being able to deposit it somewhere that they own would be better than having us try to maintain it. But we haven't really worked that out yet.
Well, no, that's fair. I think that's the right goal. And I love the fact that you guys are looking at making sure you're going into a straight licensing model. That's important. So anyway, congratulations. This is awesome. Yeah, this is awesome.
And he's going to be at the Growth Factory event, and he's having a booth, so we'll see him there. Yeah.
I'll meet you in person.
Yeah, we're excited.
We're one of the
Yeah, stop over and have a cocktail. You good?
We should have him present at GrowTech Fest.
I just was Startup Stories already,
Oh, okay, good.
We might be contacting you for our event that's coming up in October, actually, GrowTech Fest here in Chico at Sierra Nevada Brewery. So we have a section called Startup Stories, and our brains were on the same level.
We're the only entrepreneurial conference north of Sacramento. And so we have people coming from all over the North State and other areas, frankly. And this will be our third year that we've done this, so.
I've done a bunch of startups.
No,
So,
third year.
I can talk about this one, or I can talk about many, depending upon what the venue is and the intent.
Yeah, we'll connect with you.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you so much for your time. Just give them another
Thanks
year.
for
So-
listening and all your feedback.
Alrighty, for
Thank you so much.
for one last final question that we like to ask all our presenters, what can we here at 1 Million Cups Chico do for you today?
Well, I think that the financing thing is going to be resolved pretty quickly, and I think the person who's going to put money in, you guys will know. I can't share that now, but connectivity into use cases that you think would be appropriate for what we're doing, for us to meet our goals of we'd love to be in the 100 million to $billion company. You can't get there on one use case. We have to do several. We have to find one that is probably bigger than the airports to eventually dig into. So we're talking to SMUD because that's going to be, energy is going to be enormous, but there's Cal Fire would be huge. There's ways to get sit down with people that are working on these problems and hear what they're looking for and see if there's an appropriate way for us to work with them. That would be super helpful.
Wind turbines.
Oh,
Wind turbines would be,
Yeah, there's a bunch of companies that are doing that specifically because they're based in Northern Europe, where a lot of these turbines come from. So that's and also bridges. Bridges is another use case that there's very specialized equipment and people doing that. So we're focused on things that are bigger.
Boulder Dam with that thing that caught on fire the other day.
But to fly Oroville Dam, once a day and just track cracks. That kind of thing we easily do. We had we're working at one point. We're working with the California Department of Boating and Waterways to track invasive species in the Delta. These kinds of things. There's thousands of use cases, and if you can help us find something meaty, that would be great.
cases.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Keyword.
All righty.
Use
Thank you
cases,
so
use
much, Steve. We are
Thanks,
going to do
Steve.
some closing statements real quick.
Thank you.
There we go. So I am Chanel Hamilton, your host organizer. Steve Shepard is our chapter lead. And we want to thank our community sponsors, Chico Start, GrowTech. Oh, sorry, I'm a little sick, sorry. Chico Start, GrowTech, Global Entrepreneurship Network, T-Bar, Build.com, Startup Grind, Explore Butte County, and Stobel Coffee. Doesn't look like we have any upcoming events, but stay tuned. And we will be here again next week on Wednesday at 9 a.m. on Zoom and at Stobel Coffee with the Power Moms Tribe. And if you're interested in signing up for our Chico Start newsletter, feel free to scan that QR code. And again, thank you guys all so much for coming out today. And we all hope you have a good day.
Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you again, Steve. All right. Good job, Chanel and Ed.
So is there
and
gonna